Sometimes the most unexpected blessings arrive in the most ordinary moments. In the quiet suburb of Oakwood Heights, a single father's desperate attempt to keep his family home becomes an extraordinary journey of second chances and new beginnings. When Jack Mitchell steps forward to help a stranger with a damaged fence, he has no idea that this simple act of kindness will change the course of his life forever. This isn't just a story about mending fences or saving houses. It's about rebuilding trust, finding courage in the most unlikely places, and discovering that sometimes what looks like the end of the road is actually just the beginning. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The foreclosure notice had been sitting on Jack Mitchell's kitchen counter for exactly 8 days. He'd placed it underneath a ceramic fruit bowl, as if the weight of fake apples and pears could somehow make it disappear. But paper has a way of finding its voice. At night, when his daughter Emma was asleep, Jack would sit at the counter, the harsh glow of his laptop illuminating the wrinkles that had formed around his eyes far too early for a man of 36. 30 days. That's all they had left in the only home Emma had ever known. Outside, an autumn storm railed against the windows of the modest 2-story house. The weather matched Jack's mood, restless, unpredictable, and threatening to break something. He closed his laptop with a soft click and rubbed his eyes. Another night of scrolling through job listings that either didn't pay enough or required qualifications he didn't have. The construction company he'd worked for had folded 6 months ago, another casualty of the economic downturn that had left half the neighborhood with "for sale" signs on their lawns. The digital clock on the microwave blinked 2:14 a.m. Jack pushed himself away from the counter, his chair scraping against the worn linoleum floor. He moved quietly through the darkened house, pausing at Emma's bedroom door. The soft glow of her nightlight cast shadows across her sleeping form. At 8 years old, she still insisted on keeping the light on. Not because she was afraid of the dark, she had explained with the serious expression she often wore these days, but because the dark might be afraid of being alone. Jack leaned against the doorframe, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. Emma had her mother's eyes and his stubborn chin. After Melissa died 3 years ago, those eyes had looked at him with such trust, such unflinching faith, that he would somehow make everything okay. He had promised her that nothing would change, that they would stay in their house, in her school, in the neighborhood where her memories of her mother lived in every corner. And now he was about to break that promise. The irony wasn't lost on Jack that he built houses for a living, or at least he had, until Harper Construction went under. He could frame a roof, lay a foundation, wire a circuit box, but he couldn't seem to keep his own house from slipping through his fingers. Morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that follows a storm. The air smelled clean, like wet earth and possibility. Jack stood on his front porch, surveying the damage from last night's wind. A few scattered branches littered the yard, and the gutter above the garage hung at an awkward angle. One more thing to fix. One more task for a growing list he kept. In his head, right next to the mounting calculations of bills he couldn't pay. Dad, look what the wind did. Emma raced down the porch steps, still in her pajamas, her dark hair flying behind her like a cape. She pointed excitedly toward the end of their property, where the wooden fence that separated their yard from the vacant house next door had partially collapsed. 3 panels down, she announced, with the enthusiasm only children can muster. Good destruction. It looks like a giant stepped on it. Jack followed her, assessing the damage. The fence had been rickety for years, the wood rotting in places where rainwater collected. The storm had simply finished what time had started. Through the gap, he could see into the neighboring yard. overgrown and neglected since old Mr. Peterson had moved to a retirement home last spring. "Can we fix it?" Emma asked, poking at a splintered board with her bare toe. Jack knelt down, examining the broken fence posts. "Sure can, kiddo, but first, breakfast and shoes, not necessarily in that order." Emma giggled and raced back toward the house. As Jack followed her, he noticed something unusual. A sleek black SUV parked in the driveway of the Peterson house. After months of emptiness, it seemed the property finally had a visitor. Over breakfast, slightly burned toast and scrambled eggs, Emma chattered about her upcoming science project. Something about plant growth and different types of light. Jack nodded at the appropriate intervals, but his mind kept drifting to the fence, the black SUV, and the number 30 that seemed to be branded into his brain. "Dad, you're not listening," Emma said, waving her fork in front of his face. "This is important. Ms. Harrison says if I do well on this project, I might get put in the advanced science group." Jack refocused, giving his daughter his full attention. "I'm sorry, Em. Tell me again about the plants." As Emma launched back into her explanation, the doorbell rang. Jack frowned. They rarely had visitors, especially on a Saturday morning. "Keep eating," he told Emma as he rose from the table. "I'll be right back." He opened the front door to find a woman he'd never seen before standing on his porch. She was tall, dressed in a light grey suit that looked expensive, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She had the polished look of someone who had just stepped out of a business meeting, rather than someone making neighborhood house calls on a weekend. "Good morning," she said, offering a professional smile. "I'm Olivia Rayner. I just purchased the property next door." She gestured toward the Peterson house. "I noticed the fence between our yards was damaged in the storm last night." Jack ran a hand through his hair, suddenly aware that he hadn't shaved in 2 days and was wearing a faded t-shirt with a coffee stain on the collar. "Yeah, it took a beating," he said. "I was planning to fix it today, actually." Olivia's eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh, I was going to say I'd have someone come out to take care of it, but if you're already planning to fix it..." She paused, studying him with curious brown eyes. "Are you a handyman?" There was something in her tone, not condescension exactly, but the careful neutrality of someone who was used to managing conversations, that made Jack straighten his shoulders. "I'm a contractor, or was until recently." He didn't know why. He added that last part. Something about her made him feel like he needed to explain himself. "Dad, who is it?" Emma appeared at his side, a smudge of jam on her cheek. "This is Ms. Rayner," Jack said. "She bought Mr. Peterson's house." "Are you going to live there?" Emma asked, looking up at Olivia with undisguised curiosity. Olivia's professional demeanor softened slightly. "No, not personally. I'm in real estate development. I buy properties to renovate and resell them." "Like on TV?" Emma asked. "Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My dad can fix anything. He built our treehouse all by himself, and he's going to fix the fence today. Do you want to watch?" Jack placed a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "I'm sure Ms. Rayner has better things to do, Em." "Actually," Olivia said, checking her watch, "I was hoping to take some measurements and photos of the property today. I could contribute to the fence repair, cover the cost of materials at least. It seems only fair since it's a shared boundary." Jack's pride wanted to refuse, but his nearly empty bank account couldn't afford the luxury. "That would be helpful, thank you." "Great," Olivia smiled, this time a touch more genuinely. "I'll be next door for a few hours if you need anything." As she walked back toward her SUV, Emma looked up at Jack. "She seems nice, but kind of fancy for fixing fences." Jack chuckled. "I think fence fixing is probably not in her usual job description." "What is development?" Emma asked, carefully sounding out the word. Jack watched as Olivia pulled a tablet and measuring tape from her vehicle. It means she buys houses that need some love and makes them better, then sells them to new families. Like what you used to do at your job. Similar, Jack said, but I think Ms. Rayner does it on a much bigger scale. After breakfast, Jack changed into work clothes and headed to the garage. The space that should have housed a car was instead filled with tools. The accumulated equipment of 15 years in construction. His tools were the one thing he had refused to sell, even as the bills piled up. They represented not just his livelihood, but his identity. He was good with his hands. He could build things, fix things, just not, it seemed, his financial situation. He gathered what he needed for the fence repair. A post-hole digger, hammer, saw, level, and the box of screws and nails he kept meticulously organized. There was something calming about the familiar weight of tools in his hands, the smell of sawdust and metal. "Can I help?" Emma asked, appearing in the garage doorway. She had changed into what she called her work clothes, overalls that were already too small and a baseball cap turned backward on her head. "Absolutely," Jack said. "Every good builder needs an assistant. Go grab your gloves." Emma beamed and ran to retrieve her pink work gloves, a birthday gift from Jack's former co-worker, Mike, who had insisted that every construction worker needs proper gear. Together, they carried the tools to the broken section of fence. On the other side, Olivia was walking the perimeter of the Peterson house, tapping notes into her tablet. She waved when she saw them, then continued her assessment. "First step," Jack said to Emma, shifting into teaching mode, "is to remove the damaged materials." They worked together to pull away the broken boards and extract the cracked fence posts. Jack showed Emma how to use the level to make sure new posts would stand straight, how to measure twice before cutting once. She handed him tools with solemn importance, asking questions and absorbing his answers with intense concentration. As they worked, Jack became aware of Olivia watching them from a few yards away. She had been circling the Peterson house, taking photos and making notes, but now she stood still, observing their fence repair operation with undisguised interest. "You're good at that," she said, approaching the fence line. "Teaching, I mean." Jack looked up, wiping sweat from his forehead with his forearm. "Emma's a quick learner." "I'm his apprentice," Emma informed Olivia seriously. "That means I'm learning the trade." "An excellent career choice," Olivia replied, matching Emma's seriousness. "The world always needs skilled builders." Jack couldn't tell if she was humoring his daughter or if she genuinely meant it. There was something unreadable about Olivia Rayner, a careful distance she maintained even in casual conversation. "I've made some calculations for the renovations next door," she said, turning her attention to Jack. "The property has good bones, but it needs significant updating. Would you—" She hesitated, seemingly reconsidering her words. "I was wondering if you might be interested in consulting on the project, given your experience." Jack straightened, surprised by the offer. "Consulting? I have contractors I work with regularly, but they're booked on other projects right now. I could use someone with local knowledge to advise on the renovation plans. It would be paid work, of course." There it was, the slight emphasis on paid, that told Jack she had somehow intuited his financial situation. Was it that obvious? The worn elbows of his shirt, perhaps, or the patches on Emma's overalls? Pride made him want to refuse outright. Pragmatism reminded him of the foreclosure notice under the fruit bowl. "I appreciate the offer," he said carefully. "But I should mention that Harper Construction went under because the owner couldn't secure financing for his projects. The whole industry is struggling in this area right now. Not sure how much value my local knowledge would add." Olivia's expression shifted slightly, a flash of something that might have been respect. "Precisely why I need someone who understands the challenges," she said. "I'm not just fixing up a house, I'm testing a market. If this renovation succeeds, my firm plans to develop more properties in Oakwood Heights." Jack drove a new fence, post into the ground, with perhaps more force than necessary. The idea of developers swooping in to revitalize the neighborhood sat uneasily with him. He'd seen it happen in other parts of the city, struggling areas transformed with high-end, housing that original residents could no longer afford. "You're going to price out the people who already live here," he said, the words escaping before he could filter them. Emma looked up, confused by the sudden tension in her father's voice. Olivia didn't flinch at his accusation. Instead, she considered it, her head tilted slightly. "That's a fair concern," she said finally, "and precisely why I'd value input from someone invested in the community. Development doesn't have to mean displacement." Before Jack could respond, Emma tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, I'm hungry." The simple request broke the moment. Jack checked his watch, surprised to see it was already past noon. "Lunch break," he announced, setting down his hammer. "The fence will still be here after sandwiches." "I should get going anyway," Olivia said. "I have another appointment this afternoon." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, offering it to Jack. "Think about the consulting offer. No pressure." Jack accepted the card, noticing the embossed logo of Rayner Development Group. Beneath her name were the words, CEO and founder. "You own the company," he said, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. A small smile crossed Olivia's face. "I built it from the ground up, not unlike what you're doing with that fence." With that, she nodded goodbye to Emma and walked back toward her SUV. Jack watched her go, the business card still in his hand. "She talks fancy," Emma observed as they walked back to the house, "but I like her shoes." Jack laughed despite himself. "Of course you noticed her shoes." Inside, as he made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, crusts cut off for Emma, he found himself glancing repeatedly at Olivia's business card on the counter. CEO and founder. The woman probably made more in a month than he had made in his best year at Harper Construction. After lunch, they returned to the fence project. The Peterson house, Olivia's house now, he supposed, stood empty and quiet. The black SUV was gone. As Jack secured the new fence boards, he found himself wondering about Olivia Rayner. There had been no wedding ring on her finger, he'd noticed. Not that it mattered. She inhabited a different world than his, one of business suits and development. Deals, of buying houses as investments rather than homes. By late afternoon, the fence was repaired. Jack stood back, Emma at his side, both of them admiring their handiwork. "It looks better than before," Emma declared. "We should write our names on it." "That's called graffiti," Jack said with a smile. "Not if it's our fence," Emma argued. "It's like a signature. Artists always sign their work." Jack couldn't fault her logic. "All right, artist. Small signatures only." He found a pencil in his tool belt, and they each wrote their initials in the corner of one of the new fence boards. JM and EM. Proof that they were here, that they had built something lasting. If only it could be that simple to leave their mark on the house itself. In 30 days, someone else would be sleeping in Emma's room, cooking in their kitchen, living their life in the space where Jack had carried his newborn daughter across the threshold, where he had held his wife's hand as cancer slowly took her away, where he had learned to be both mother and father to a child who deserved so much more than he could give her. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Jack sat at the kitchen counter again. The foreclosure notice seemed to mock him from beneath the fruit bowl. He pulled out Olivia's business card, turning it over in his hands. Development doesn't have to mean displacement. Was that true? Or just a convenient phrase from someone who had likely never faced eviction? Outside, the repaired fence stood as a testament to his skills, skills that were increasingly undervalued in a changing economy. The bitter irony wasn't lost on him. He could fix a broken fence, but not his broken finances. Jack's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Mike, his former co-worker. Heard Rayner Development bought the Peterson place. Word is, they're planning major renovations throughout the neighborhood. Might be work in it for us? Jack stared at the message. So Olivia hadn't been exaggerating about her company's plans for Oakwood Heights. He thought about her watching him work, the careful assessment in her eyes. Had the consulting offer been genuine, or just a way to gather information from a local before proceeding with plans already set in motion? He set his phone down without responding. Tomorrow, he would call the bank again, see if there was any possibility of extending the deadline. He would update his resume again. He would check the job listings again. He would do everything in his power to keep his promise to Emma. But tonight, looking out the kitchen window at the newly repaired fence, straight and solid against the gathering darkness, Jack allowed himself to consider an uncomfortable possibility. Maybe Olivia Rayner and her development company weren't just harbingers of unwelcome change. Maybe, just maybe, they represented an opportunity. He picked up his phone again and saved her number from the business card. He wouldn't call her tonight. Pride and caution held him back in equal measure. But tomorrow, after he'd had time to think, to weigh his options, tomorrow might be different. The fence between their properties now stood repaired, a bridge between past and future, between what was broken and what might yet be mended. As Jack finally headed to bed, he realized that fence represented more than a simple boundary. It was the first tangible thing he had built in 6 months, proof that he hadn't lost his touch, that he still had value to offer in a world that seemed increasingly indifferent to his skills. And perhaps that was worth something, not just to him, but to a real estate mogul with plans that might either destroy or save the only home he and Emma had ever known. Only time would tell which side of the fence their future would fall on. Sunday morning dawned bright and clear, the kind of autumn day that made everything look like a photograph from a calendar. Crisp blue skies, trees dressed in vibrant oranges and reds, a gentle breeze that carried the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves. Jack woke early, the habit of years in construction forcing his eyes open before the alarm. For a moment, he lay still, listening to the quiet house, the distant chirping of birds, the soft hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen below, the weight of his decisions pressed against his chest. 30 days until foreclosure. And a business. Card from Olivia Rayner sitting on his kitchen counter. He swung his legs out of bed, wincing at the familiar ache in his lower back, a souvenir from years of lifting, bending, and climbing. At 36, his body was already carrying the wear and tear of a much older man. Melissa used to tease him about it, rubbing arnica gel into his shoulders while telling him he had the back of an 80-year-old and the stubbornness to match. The memory brought a brief smile, quickly replaced by the hollow ache that always accompanied thoughts of his late wife. 3 years had dulled the sharpness of grief, but some days the loss felt as fresh as the moment the doctor had said those final words. "I'm sorry, but there's nothing more we can do." Downstairs the house was quiet, Emma still asleep in her room. Jack made coffee, the ritual automatic, filter, grounds, water, the satisfying click of the machine starting up. While it brewed, he stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the backyard and the newly repaired fence. In the early morning, light, the fresh wood stood out against the weathered grey of the older sections, a visible reminder of yesterday's work and of Olivia Rayner's offer. Jack pulled his phone from his pocket, staring at the number he had entered last night. What exactly would consulting entail? And was he selling out his neighbors by helping a developer whose ultimate goal might be to transform the neighborhood beyond recognition? The coffee maker beeped, drawing his attention back to the present. He poured a cup, adding a splash of milk, and carried it to the kitchen table where his laptop sat. Opening his email, he grimaced at the unread messages, mostly job rejections and bills. He clicked through them methodically, his jaw tightening with each politely worded, "We've chosen another candidate" message. The sound of small feet padding down the hallway broke his concentration. Emma appeared in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep, still in her mismatched pajamas. "Morning, Dad," she yawned, climbing onto the chair opposite him. "Is there hot chocolate?" Jack closed his laptop, pushing aside his worries to focus on his daughter. "Coming right up, sunshine. Sleep okay?" Emma nodded, resting her chin on her hands. "I dreamed about Mom. She was fixing the fence with us." Jack paused, a packet of hot chocolate mix suspended above a mug. These moments always caught him off guard. Emma's casual mentions of Melissa dropped into conversation like pebbles into still water. The ripples they caused still threatened to overwhelm him. "That would have been nice," he said carefully, focusing on tearing open the packet and pouring it into the mug. She was always good at helping with projects. "She said the fence looked great," Emma continued, her tone matter-of-fact. "And that you shouldn't worry so much." Jack turned to the microwave, hiding his expression as he heated water for Emma's hot chocolate. Did she somehow know about the foreclosure? He'd been so careful to shield her from their financial troubles, making excuses for why they couldn't go to the movies or order pizza, explaining away the disconnected cable service as a technical problem. "Lots on my mind lately," he said, keeping his voice light. "Work stuff." "Are you going to call the fence lady?" Emma asked, startling him with her perceptiveness. Jack set the steaming mug in front of her. "What makes you think that?" Emma shrugged, blowing carefully on her hot chocolate. "You kept looking at her card yesterday, and we need money." The simplicity of her observation struck him like a physical blow. Of course she knew. Kids always knew more than adults gave them credit for. "Emma," he began, sitting down across from her. "Things are a bit tight right now, but you don't need to worry about—" "Dad," she interrupted, giving him the same exasperated look Melissa used to give him when he was being particularly dense. "I'm 8, not stupid. Billy Martinez moved away last month because his dad lost their house, and you've been doing your worried face every time you check the mail." Jack ran a hand through his hair, momentarily at a loss. What was the right balance between protecting her and being honest? "You're right," he admitted finally. "Things are tight, but that's for me to figure out, not you. Your job is to be a kid, go to school, learn stuff, have fun." Emma took a sip of her hot chocolate, leaving a small mustache above her upper lip. "My job is also to help you," she said firmly. "That's what family does." The echo of Melissa in those words made Jack's heart constrict. His wife had always emphasized that family helps family no matter what. "Well then," he said, reaching across the table to wipe away the chocolate mustache with his thumb, "your help right now would be to get dressed. We've got some errands to run." "Are we going to see the fence lady?" Emma persisted. Jack hesitated. "I haven't decided yet, but I promise, whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." Emma seemed satisfied with this answer, sliding off her chair and heading back to her room. Jack watched her go, marveling at her resilience, her unshakable belief that everything would work out somehow. He wished he shared her confidence. After breakfast, they drove to the hardware store. Jack needed to return the extra materials from the fence repair and pick up a few items for other small repairs around the house. If they were going to lose it to foreclosure, he was at least determined to leave it in decent shape. The hardware store had been Jack's favorite place since he was a boy, trailing after his father down aisles filled with tools and possibilities. The familiar smell of sawdust, metal, and rubber always brought a sense of comfort. Emma loved it, too, fascinated by the endless rows of mysterious gadgets and brightly colored paints. As they walked through the store, Jack greeted several former colleagues, now working other jobs or picking up occasional handyman work. The construction industry in Oakwood Heights had been hit hard, not just by the economic downturn, but by changing demographics and building styles. The modest homes and businesses that had defined the neighborhood for decades were increasingly giving way to modern designs that required specialists many local workers couldn't afford to become. Jack Mitchell, As I Live and Breathe. The booming voice belonged to Tony Guzman, Jack's former supervisor at Harper Construction. Tony was a barrel-chested man in his 50s, with calloused hands and a perpetual tan from decades working outdoors. He crushed Jack in a bear hug before bending down to high-five Emma. "Look at you, princess. You've grown a foot since I last saw you." Emma giggled. "No, I haven't, Mr. Tony. Just 1 inch." Dad measured on my door. Tony winked at her. 1 very important inch. He straightened, turning back to Jack. "How have you been, man? Found anything steady yet?" The question was asked with genuine concern, but it still stung. Jack forced a casual shrug. "Picking up odd jobs here and there. You know how it is." Tony nodded, his expression sympathetic. "Heard a rumor you might be consulting for Raina." "Development. That true?" Jack blinked in surprise. "Where'd you hear that?" "Small neighborhood, big ears," Tony said with a knowing smile. "Olivia Rayner's not exactly low profile. Word is, she bought the Peterson place and has eyes on more properties." "She offered me some consulting work," Jack admitted, lowering his voice slightly. "I haven't decided yet." Tony studied him for a moment. "Look, I know some guys have feelings about developers coming in, but Rayner's different. My cousin did some electrical work for one of her Boston projects last year. Said she's straight up, pays fair, and actually cares about doing right by the neighborhoods she builds in." Jack absorbed this information, weighing it against his own reservations. What about the people who can't afford to stay once property values go up? Tony glanced down at Emma, who was examining a display of colorful duct tape nearby, then back at Jack. "All I know is, change is coming whether we like it or not. Question is whether we want a seat at the table or not." He clapped Jack on the shoulder. "Think about it, and let me know if you take the gig. I could use some work too." After Tony moved on, Jack found himself standing in the tool aisle, staring unseeing at a row of hammers. Was Tony right? Was working with Olivia Rayner a chance to influence the changes coming to Oakwood Heights, rather than simply being swept aside by them? "Dad, can we get this?" Emma held up a roll of tape covered in rainbow unicorns. Jack smiled despite his preoccupation. "What exactly would we use unicorn tape for?" "Everything," Emma said solemnly. "Unicorns make everything better." The simple logic of childhood momentarily lightened the weight on Jack's shoulders. Hard to argue with that. Put it in the basket. They were heading toward the checkout when Jack spotted a familiar figure in the paint section, Olivia Rayner, dressed in jeans and a simple gray sweater, studying color samples with intense concentration. The casual weekend outfit was a stark contrast to her business attire from yesterday, but somehow she maintained the same aura of focused competence. Jack hesitated, torn between the urge to avoid her and the nagging sense that he needed to make a decision about her offer. Emma made the choice for him. "Fence lady!" she called out, waving enthusiastically. Olivia looked up, momentarily startled, then smiled as she recognized them. "Well, hello there, fence builders. Fancy meeting you here." Jack approached, suddenly conscious of his worn flannel shirt and the ancient baseball cap covering his unwashed hair. "Miss Rayner." "Olivia, please," she insisted, tucking a paint sample into the pocket of her jeans. "Miss Rayner makes me sound like I'm about to assign homework." "Are you buying paint for Mr. Peterson's house?" Emma asked, studying the color swatches in Olivia's hand. "Just gathering some ideas," Olivia replied. "What do you think?" "I'm torn between harbor gray and coastal fog for the exterior." Emma scrunched her nose. They look the same. Olivia laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her face. You know, that's exactly what I was thinking. Maybe I need something with more personality. Jack found himself oddly transfixed by that laugh. Unexpected and warm, like sunlight breaking through clouds. It didn't fit with the image he'd constructed of Olivia as a calculating businesswoman. Grey is always safe for resale, he heard himself saying. But if you want the house to stand out in a good way, a deep blue with white trim would work with the colonial style, something like naval or indigo batik. Olivia looked at him with interest. That's actually a great suggestion. The neighborhood has enough gray already. She selected a few blue samples from the display. Have you had a chance to consider my offer? The direct question caught Jack off guard. I've been thinking about it, he admitted. Still not sure what exactly you're looking for in a consultant. Olivia glanced at Emma, who was now engrossed in spinning a nearby display of painter's tape. I have some preliminary plans in my car, if you'd like to take a look. Maybe give me your professional opinion? Jack hesitated. Part of him wanted to make an excuse to delay the decision further, but another part, the practical, increasingly desperate part, knew he couldn't afford to dismiss potential income, not with the foreclosure deadline looming. Sure, he said finally, we were just finishing up here anyway. They completed their purchases and followed Olivia to the parking lot. Her SUV was parked a few spaces away from Jack's battered pickup truck, a stark visual representation of their different circumstances. Olivia opened the back of her vehicle and pulled out a tube of rolled blueprints. I was actually planning to stop by later today to show you these. She unrolled the plans on the hood of her SUV, using her wallet and keys to weigh down the corners. Jack leaned in, professional interest automatically engaged. The blueprints showed the Peterson house completely transformed. Walls removed to create an open floor plan. A master suite added to the back, the traditional separate dining room converted to a home office space. It was a significant renovation, but not a teardown. What do you think? Olivia asked, watching his face closely. Jack studied the plans with a contractor's eye. It's ambitious. You're keeping the original footprint, but modernizing the layout. He pointed to several areas. You'll need to verify these walls aren't load-bearing. And this plumbing configuration might be problematic with the existing lines. Olivia nodded, making notes on her phone. Exactly the kind of insight I need. The architect did a great job with the design, but he's not familiar with these older Oakwood homes and their quirks. Jack continued examining the plans, pointing out potential issues and suggesting alternatives. He found himself slipping into the familiar role of problem solver, the tension in his shoulders easing as he focused on concrete challenges rather than his own precarious situation. Emma, bored with adult conversation, had wandered a few feet away and was balancing on the parking lot curb like a tightrope walker. You really know these houses, Olivia observed. How long have you lived in the neighborhood? All my life, Jack replied, still studying the blueprints. Grew up 3 streets over. My father worked construction too. He helped build half the additions in Oakwood during the 80s housing boom. So this isn't just a job for you, Olivia said perceptively. It's personal. Jack looked up, meeting her eyes. Yeah, I guess it is. He hesitated, then decided to be direct. That's why I'm concerned about what your company's plans might mean for people who've been here for generations. Development can be good, but not if it prices out the families who built this neighborhood. He expected defensiveness or corporate platitudes. Instead, Olivia rolled up the blueprints and looked at him with surprising intensity. My father was a contractor too, she said, in South Boston. When developers came in, he couldn't compete with the big firms they brought. We lost our home when I was 12. She tapped the blueprints against her palm. That's actually why I started Rayner Development. I believe neighborhoods can be revitalized without destroying their character or displacing their residents. Jack studied her, trying to reconcile this personal history with his preconceptions. Is that really possible? Once property values rise, taxes follow. People get pushed out whether you intend it or not. It's complicated, Olivia acknowledged, but there are approaches that help. Working with local contractors instead of bringing in outside firms, creating mixed-income housing options, establishing property tax relief programs for long-term residents. She held his gaze steadily. I can't fix a broken system single-handedly, but I can try to do better within it. Before Jack could respond, Emma called out, "Dad, there's a puppy over there." She was pointing across the parking lot where a young woman was walking a small, energetic dog. The momentary distraction broke the intensity of the conversation. "I should let you go," Olivia said, tucking the blueprints back into her vehicle. "But I'd still like your input on the Peterson renovation. The consulting fee would be $75 an hour, probably 20-30 hours total over the next few weeks. Think about it?" "I will," Jack promised, and was surprised to realize he meant it. Something about Olivia's story had shifted his perspective slightly. "Excellent." She smiled, that genuine expression that transformed her professional demeanor into something more approachable. "Here's my direct line. Call or text anytime." She handed him a small card with a handwritten number on it. As Jack watched her drive away, Emma rejoined him, slipping her small hand into his. "I like her," she declared. "She doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby." Jack squeezed his daughter's hand. "No, she certainly doesn't." The rest of the weekend passed in a blur of routine activities, homework help, laundry, meal prep for the week ahead. But Jack's thoughts kept returning to Olivia's offer and the approaching foreclosure deadline. By Sunday evening, he had made his decision. After Emma was in bed, he sat at the kitchen counter and dialed Olivia's number. She answered on the third ring. "Jack," she said, somehow not sounding surprised. "How are you?" "I've been thinking about your consulting offer," he said, bypassing small talk. "I'd like to accept with a condition." "I'm listening." Jack took a deep breath. "I want to bring in some local contractors for the actual work. Guys who've lost jobs when Harper Construction folded. Good workers who know these houses like I do." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Then Olivia said, "That's actually perfect. I was going to ask for recommendations anyway. I prefer working with local talent whenever possible." Relief washed over Jack. "Then I'm in." "Wonderful." He could hear the smile in her voice. "Can you meet tomorrow afternoon? Say 2 p.m. at the Peterson house. I'd like to walk through the property with you and get your detailed input before we finalize plans." "I'll be there," Jack promised. After hanging up, he sat for a long time at the counter, staring at the foreclosure notice that still lurked beneath the fruit bowl. 30 days. The consulting job wouldn't be enough to save the house, not even close, but it was something. A step forward when he'd been sliding steadily backward for months. He went to bed with mixed emotions. Hope warring with practicality. Pride with necessity. In the darkness of his bedroom, he could almost hear Melissa's voice. "One step at a time, Jack. That's how you build anything worth keeping." Monday morning arrived with a steady drizzle that turned the fallen leaves into a slippery carpet on sidewalks and streets. Jack walked Emma to her bus stop, both of them huddled under an umbrella, steam rising from their travel mugs. Coffee for him, hot chocolate for her. "Are you going to work with the fence lady today?" Emma asked as they waited, her breath forming small clouds in the cool air. "I'm meeting with her this afternoon," Jack confirmed, "and her name is Ms. Rayner, not Fence Lady." Emma shrugged, unconcerned with the correction. "Will I stay with Mrs. Patel after school?" Their elderly neighbor had been a godsend since Melissa died, watching Emma whenever Jack's work schedule required it. "Not today. I should be home before your bus drops you off." The yellow school bus appeared at the end of the street. its headlights glowing in the grey morning. Jack bent down to Emma's level, adjusting her raincoat hood. "Have a good day, sunshine. Learn something amazing." Emma grinned, revealing the gap where she'd recently lost a front tooth. "I will. Fix something amazing." The simple faith in her voice made Jack's throat tighten. He watched her board the bus, waving until it disappeared around the corner, then turned back toward home. He had several hours before his meeting with Olivia, time he intended to use researching Rainer development and preparing questions about the Peterson House project. Back home, Jack settled at the kitchen table with his laptop. Over the next few hours, he immersed himself in information about Olivia's company. Their website was polished, but not flashy, showcasing before and after photos of renovation projects in Boston, Providence, and Hartford. Jack was impressed by the transformations. Historic details preserved while interiors were modernized. Facades restored rather than replaced. He dug deeper, searching for news articles and reviews. Rainer Development had won several awards for historic preservation and community engagement. There were a few critical pieces about gentrification concerns, but even these acknowledged that the company made efforts to work with existing neighborhood organizations and hire locally. One article from a Boston business journal particularly caught his attention. It profiled Olivia as a developer with a difference, detailing her background, growing up in a working-class South Boston neighborhood, working her way through college, with construction and administrative jobs, founding her company at 27 with a small loan and enormous determination. The piece included a quote from Olivia that resonated with Jack. "I believe beautiful spaces shouldn't be exclusive luxuries. Everyone deserves a home that functions well and feels good to live in. That's what drives my approach to development, creating value without creating exclusivity." By the time Jack needed to leave for his meeting with Olivia, his perspective had shifted. The foreclosure notice still sat like a stone in his stomach, but alongside it grew a small seed of possibility. Perhaps working with Rainer Development wouldn't be a betrayal of his neighborhood after all. Perhaps it could be part of creating a future where families like his might still belong. The rain had stopped by early afternoon, leaving the world washed clean and gleaming. Jack walked the short distance to the Peterson house, noticing details he'd overlooked before. The intricate molding around the front porch, the solid craftsmanship of the railings, the graceful proportions that spoke of an era when houses were built to last generations. Olivia's SUV was already parked in the driveway. As Jack approached, she emerged from the house carrying a clipboard and wearing rain boots with her otherwise businesslike outfit. "Right on time," she greeted him with a smile. "Ready to tell me everything wrong with my renovation plans?" Jack couldn't help smiling back. "Isn't that what you're paying me for?" "Exactly." She handed him a spare clipboard with the blueprint attached. "I thought we'd start in the basement. That's where the biggest challenges usually hide in these old houses." They spent the next 2 hours methodically examining every inch of the Peterson house. Jack pointed out issues the architect hadn't considered: aging wiring that would need complete replacement, floor joists that had been questionably modified during a previous renovation, a chimney that served no function but was integral to the roof structure. Olivia took detailed notes, asking intelligent questions and occasionally pushing back when she thought Jack was being too conservative in his assessments. They debated the merits of various approaches, finding a rhythm of professional exchange that felt surprisingly comfortable. "The kitchen is going to be the biggest challenge," Jack said, as they stood in the outdated space with its worn linoleum and 1970s cabinets. "You want to open it to the dining room, but this wall is definitely load-bearing." Olivia tapped her pen against her clipboard. "Could we install a beam to support the load? Maybe exposed wood to add character?" "Possible, but expensive. You'd need an engineer to calculate the proper dimensions." Jack ran his hand along the wall. "And there's plumbing running through here to the upstairs bathroom. Rerouting that adds another layer of complexity." What would you do? Olivia asked, watching him closely. If this were your project. No budget constraints? Jack considered the question seriously. I'd still open it up, but I'd create a partial divider, maybe a peninsula with cabinets below and open space above. Maintains the separation between spaces that these older homes were designed for, while allowing the light and flow modern buyers want. Olivia nodded slowly. I like that. It honors the original architecture without being enslaved to it. She made several notes, then looked around the kitchen again. What about the floors? The listing mentioned hardwood under this linoleum. Jack knelt down and pried up a corner of the peeling flooring. Beneath was indeed hardwood, though in rough condition. Oak, he confirmed, probably original to the house. It would need significant refinishing, but it could be beautiful. Worth saving? Absolutely. They don't make floors like this anymore. Old growth. Timber, tight grain. You can't buy this quality today at any price. As they continued through the house, Jack found himself increasingly engaged with the project. The Peterson house had good bones, as builders said. A solid structure with thoughtful design that had weathered decades with dignity. It deserved a respectful renovation rather than a gutting. In the master bedroom, Olivia paused by the window that overlooked Jack's backyard. From this vantage point, they could see the repaired section of fence, Emma's treehouse in the old oak, and the small vegetable garden that had been Melissa's pride and joy, now somewhat overgrown, but still producing tomatoes and peppers. Nice yard, Olivia commented. The treehouse is charming. Built it when Emma was 4, Jack said, feeling an unexpected surge of pride. Melissa, my late wife, she designed it. I just handled the construction. Olivia turned to him, her expression softening. I'm sorry for your loss. The simple sincerity in her voice caught Jack off guard. Most people either avoided mentioning Melissa or offered platitudes that rang hollow. Olivia's straightforward acknowledgement felt refreshing. Thank you, he said. It's been 3 years now. Olivia nodded, not pushing for more information. Instead, she returned to her notes, giving Jack a moment to compose himself. By the time they completed the house tour, the afternoon was waning. They stood on the front porch, comparing observations and finalizing next steps. This has been incredibly helpful, Olivia said, reviewing her notes. You've identified at least 6 issues I would have missed until they became expensive problems, mid-renovation. Just experience, Jack said modestly. When you've torn apart enough old houses, you learn where the skeletons are buried, literally in some cases. Olivia laughed. I once found a time capsule from 1923 inside a wall during a Boston renovation. Newspapers, coins, and a very unsettling doll. The Peterson house is probably too new for hidden treasures, Jack said. But you never know what's behind these walls. They scheduled another meeting for later in the week to review the revised plans. As Jack prepared to leave, Olivia hesitated, then said, I was thinking about our conversation at the hardware store, about neighborhood change. Jack turned, back, curious about where this was going. I'm hosting a community meeting next Monday evening at the library, she continued, to discuss my company's plans for Oakwood Heights and hear residents' concerns. I'd like you to be there, not just as my consultant, but as someone with deep roots here. Your perspective would be valuable. The invitation surprised Jack. You really want to hear what people think, even if they're against your projects. Especially then, Olivia said firmly. The best development plans adapt to community needs, not the other way around. She handed him another business card. Details are on the back. Think about it. As Jack walked home, the card in his pocket, he found himself reassessing Olivia. Rayner yet again. She wasn't what he'd expected, not a callous developer intent on profit at any cost, but a thoughtful professional with her own complex motivations. Whether that made her plans for Oakwood Heights beneficial or detrimental remained to be seen, but Jack was increasingly curious to find out. Emma's school bus was just pulling away as he reached their house. She ran to him, backpack bouncing, a paper clutched in her hand. "Dad, look what I made in art class." She thrust the paper toward him, a carefully colored picture of a house, their house, judging by the tree with the treehouse in the yard. "That's beautiful, Em," he said, admiring. The careful attention she'd paid to details like the porch swing and the pattern of bricks on the chimney. "Miss Harrison says we're doing a project on community," Emma explained as they walked up the porch steps. "We have to draw our favorite places in the neighborhood." Inside, she spread her homework on the kitchen table while Jack started dinner. Preparations. As he chopped vegetables for a stir-fry, his gaze kept drifting to Emma's drawing of their house, to the foreclosure notice still hidden beneath the fruit bowl, and to the business cards from Olivia Rayner, now lined up beside his laptop. 30 days, one chance meeting over a broken fence, and a decision to be made that might determine not just where they would live, but who they might become. That night, after Emma was asleep, Jack sat on the front porch with a cup of coffee, looking out at the quiet street. Across the way, the Peterson house stood dark, except for a single light in what would become Olivia's project office. He wondered if she was in there now, revising plans based on his input, reshaping the future of not just that house, but potentially the entire neighborhood. The weight of the foreclosure notice still pressed on him, a countdown clock he couldn't ignore. But for the first time in months, Jack felt something like hope stirring. Not a dramatic revelation, but a quiet possibility that perhaps the fence between his past and future wasn't as insurmountable as it had seemed. The consulting work with Olivia moved faster than Jack had anticipated. By Thursday afternoon, he had already logged 15 billable hours, meticulously documenting potential issues with the Peterson house renovation and suggesting alternative approaches that would preserve the home's character while achieving Olivia's modernization goals. Each evening, he'd send detailed notes and receive prompt responses, often late at night, suggesting Olivia kept hours as long as his own. Jack was at the kitchen table reviewing the latest revised blueprints when Emma burst through the front door, home from school with flushed cheeks and excited eyes. "Dad, guess what? Miss Harrison picked my community drawing for the school display." She dropped her backpack on the floor and thrust a congratulatory sticker toward him. "And I got invited to Zoe's birthday party on Saturday. Can I go, please?" Jack set aside the blueprints, giving his daughter his full attention. "That's fantastic about your drawing, Em. And Zoe's party, is that at the trampoline park?" Emma nodded vigorously. "Everyone's going, and they have a new foam pit that I really want to try." The unspoken question hung in the air between them. Could they afford it? Birthday parties at the trampoline park weren't cheap. Entrance, fees, gift expenses, new socks required for all jumpers. In the past, Jack had sometimes fabricated scheduling conflicts to avoid admitting they couldn't manage such luxuries. But today was different. The first installment of his consulting fee had been deposited that morning, temporarily easing the constant financial pressure. "I think we can make that work," he said, enjoying the way Emma's eyes widened in surprise and delight. "We'll need to get a present for Zoe. Any ideas?" Emma launched into elaborate gift possibilities while Jack started dinner. As she chattered about friendship bracelets and unicorn-themed options, he found himself thinking about how long it had been since he'd been able to simply say yes to something Emma wanted. The constant strain of financial precarity had become so normalized that its momentary absence felt almost disorienting. Later, after Emma was in bed, Jack sat on the front porch with his laptop, finalizing his notes on the Peterson house's electrical system. The night was clear, stars visible despite the neighborhood's streetlights, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of someone's fireplace. Across the street, The Peterson house stood dark except for a single window where Olivia had set up a temporary office. As if summoned by his thoughts, the front door opened and Olivia emerged, locking up behind her. She paused on the porch, seeming to sense his presence in the darkness, then raised a hand in greeting. "Working late?" she called. "Could ask you the same," Jack replied. Olivia crossed the street, stopping at the bottom of his porch steps. In the dim light from the street lamps, her face was softened, the professional veneer less pronounced. She wore jeans again, and a sweater that looked soft and well-worn, so different from her business attire. "I wanted to finalize some numbers. For the contractor bids," she explained. "I have meetings with 3 firms tomorrow, including 2 you recommended." Jack closed his laptop. "Tony Guzman is the best of the bunch. He's worked on half the houses in this neighborhood at some point." "So you've mentioned," Olivia said with a small smile. "Twice, actually. He must be a good friend." Jack felt warmth creep into his face, grateful for the darkness that hid it. "We went back a long way. His daughter was in the same kindergarten class as Emma." Olivia glanced toward the house, where Emma's bedroom window glowed softly from her nightlight. "How is she doing? Emma, I mean." "Good," Jack said automatically, then reconsidered. "Actually, she's doing amazing, considering everything. Kids are resilient, I guess." Olivia stepped closer, resting one hand on the porch railing. "Considering everything?" Jack hesitated. He hadn't discussed his financial situation with anyone except his loan officer at the bank, a conversation that had left him feeling both humiliated and hopeless. But something about the quiet darkness and Olivia's undemanding presence made the words easier to find. "We're facing foreclosure," he said simply. "The bank's given us 30 days, well, 25 now. After Harper Construction folded, I burned through our savings, keeping up with the mortgage. Now there's nothing left." He hadn't intended to share so much, but once he started, the words tumbled out. "I've applied for every construction and maintenance job within 50 miles. Nothing steady, just odd jobs that barely cover groceries. The consulting work with you is the first real income I've had in months." Olivia was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was carefully neutral. "Have you looked into loan modification? Sometimes banks will adjust terms to prevent foreclosure." "Tried that. Our bank was acquired in a merger last year. The new owners aren't interested in working with individual homeowners. They're bundling foreclosed properties for resale to investors." The bitterness in his voice surprised even him. "I see." Olivia shifted, seeming to make a decision. "Would you mind if I joined you? I have some thoughts, but I've been standing awkwardly for about 2 minutes now." Despite everything, Jack found himself smiling. "Sorry, not used to having visitors. Please sit." He gestured to the second rocking chair, a weathered match to his own. Olivia settled into the chair, setting her laptop bag carefully beside her. "I won't offer you a job out of pity," she said directly. "That would be insulting to both of us, but I've been genuinely impressed with your insights on the Peterson renovation. You clearly know these houses inside and out." Jack nodded, uncertain where she was headed. "My company is planning to renovate at least 5 more properties in Oakwood Heights over the next 18 months, she continued. "Based on your work this week, I'd like to offer you a formal position as a project manager, overseeing the technical aspects of all Oakwood renovations. Full-time, with benefits." The offer landed like a thunderclap in the quiet night. Jack struggled to process it, not just consulting, but a real job. Stability, health insurance for Emma. "Why?" he asked finally. "You hardly know me." Olivia turned toward him, her expression serious in the dim light. "I know enough. You're thorough, knowledgeable, and you care about doing things right. More importantly, you care about this neighborhood. You see these houses as homes, not just investment properties. She paused. That perspective is valuable to me, professionally and personally. Jack's mind raced. The position sounded ideal, using his skills, working locally, steady income. But 25 days remained until foreclosure. And even with a job offer, the bank was unlikely to halt the process without full payment of the arrears. The job sounds perfect, he admitted, but it doesn't solve my immediate problem. The bank wants $14,200 in back payments plus fees by the end of the month, or we lose the house. Olivia was quiet for a moment, rocking gently in the chair. What if I bought it? Jack stared at her. What? Your house, she clarified. I could buy it, clear the bank debt, and offer you a lease-to-own arrangement. You'd pay rent, less than your current mortgage, with a portion going toward eventual repurchase. The proposal stunned Jack into momentary silence. When he found his voice, it emerged rough with emotion. Why would you do that? It's not a good investment. The house needs work, and property values in this part of Oakwood have been stagnant for years. Maybe I'm not just thinking about investment. Returns, Olivia said quietly. Maybe I'm thinking about a little girl who deserves to keep her home, and a skilled contractor who should be rebuilding his community, not being forced out of it. Jack felt a tightness in his chest that had nothing to do with financial stress. I can't accept charity. It's not charity, Olivia insisted. It's a business arrangement that happens to benefit both parties. I get a committed project manager and a property with potential. You get to keep your home and rebuild your career. She met his gaze directly. Everyone wins. The offer seemed too good to be true, which immediately triggered Jack's skepticism. There has to be a catch. Olivia shrugged. The catch is, you'll be working for me, managing multiple renovation projects on tight deadlines. It won't be easy, and you'll have a landlord who knows exactly what needs fixing in your house and will probably nag you about addressing that sagging gutter. Ha! Despite himself, Jack laughed. You notice that, huh? I notice everything, Mr. Mitchell. It's part of my job. There was a hint of teasing in her tone, a warmth that seemed to push back against the cool night air. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, rocking gently in unison, the rhythmic creak of the chairs the only sound. Jack's mind whirled with possibilities, with hope he barely dared acknowledge, with suspicions he couldn't quite silence. I need to think about it, he said finally. This is a lot to process. Of course. Olivia stood, gathering her laptop bag. The community meeting is on Monday. Sleep on it, talk to Emma, make your decision. The offer stands either way. She paused at the top of the porch steps, looking back at him. For what it's worth, Jack, I think you're exactly the kind of person Oakwood Heights needs to keep, not just for what you can build, but for who you are. Before he could respond, she was gone, crossing the street with purposeful strides, disappearing into the darkness beyond the reach of the street lamps. Jack remained on the porch long after Olivia left, his thoughts a tangled mess of hope, suspicion, and confusion. The foreclosure notice inside seemed less threatening now, but new questions emerged to replace that worry. Could he trust Olivia's motives? Was this genuine goodwill or a calculated business move? And if it was genuine, what did that mean? He wasn't ready to examine the flutter of something more complicated than professional appreciation that had stirred when she spoke of his value to the neighborhood. Instead, he focused on practicalities, mentally calculating what a lease-to-own arrangement might look like, and whether the job offer was independent of the house purchase or contingent upon it. Eventually, the night chill drove him inside. As he locked up, his gaze fell on the family photos arranged on the living room bookshelf. Emma as a toddler on Melissa's lap, the three of them at the beach, Melissa holding newborn Emma in the hospital. His late wife smiled from every frame, eternally 31, forever preserved in moments of joy. What would you think of all this, Mel? He whispered to the empty room. As always, No answer came, but he could almost imagine what she might say. Something practical and optimistic, urging him to grab any chance to secure Emma's future. Melissa had been the risk-taker in their relationship, the one who pushed when he hesitated, who leaped while he calculated the distance. Jack moved through the quiet house, checking locks and turning off lights. In Emma's room, he paused to pull the kicked-off blanket back over her sleeping form. Her nightlight cast star-shaped patterns across the ceiling, a galaxy of possibilities. In miniature, 25 days until they might lose this, the room with its carefully chosen paint color, the growth chart marked on the closet door, the view from the window where Emma had first spotted a cardinal at the bird feeder Melissa had hung. Jack closed Emma's door softly and continued to his own room, his decision forming with each step. Morning brought clarity, as it often did. Jack moved through his routine: coffee, breakfast preparation, gentle coaxing of a sleepy Emma, with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in months. "We need to talk about something important," he told Emma as she munched on her cereal. "About our house." Emma's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "Are we moving?" She tried to sound casual, but her knuckles whitened around the spoon handle. "Actually, that's what we need to discuss," Jack said carefully. "There's a possibility we might be able to stay, but some things would change." He explained the situation. In simple terms, the bank wanting money they didn't have, the foreclosure deadline, and Olivia's unexpected offer. He left out the details of the lease-to-own arrangement, focusing instead on the basic concept that Olivia might help them keep their home. "So Ms. Rayner would be like our landlord?" Emma asked, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Temporarily," Jack confirmed, "and I would be working for her company, fixing up houses in the neighborhood." Emma considered this information, spooning up the last of her cereal milk. "Would we still have to move eventually?" "Not if everything works out," Jack promised. "We'd be able to buy our house back from her over time." Emma set down her spoon with deliberate care. "I think you should say yes." The simplicity of her response caught Jack off guard. "Just like that? You don't have any questions or concerns?" Emma shrugged. "She fixed our fence with us. She doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby. And she has nice shoes." She counted the points on her fingers as if presenting irrefutable evidence. "Plus, you smile more when you talk about working with her." Jack blinked, momentarily speechless. Had he been so transparent that even an 8-year-old could read him? "This isn't just about me, Emma. It's about our home, our future. It's a big decision." "I know." Emma's expression turned serious. "But Mom always said when you find good people, you keep them close. Ms. Rayner seems like good people." The echo of Melissa's wisdom from their daughter's mouth struck Jack like a physical blow. He reached across the table and squeezed Emma's hand. "When did you get so smart?" "I was born this way," Emma replied with a grin, the solemnity vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. "Can I wear my purple dress to school today?" The swift return to childhood concerns reassured Jack that despite her moments of startling maturity, Emma was still very much a little girl, one who deserved stability and happiness. "Purple dress it is," he agreed, already mentally composing. The text he would send to Olivia accepting her offer. Friday passed in a whirlwind of activity. Jack sent the text to Olivia early in the morning, receiving an immediate response suggesting they meet with her attorney on Monday to draft the necessary paperwork. Throughout the day, he toggled between finishing his consulting work on the Peterson house and researching lease-to-own arrangements to ensure he fully understood what he was agreeing to. By Friday evening, a tentative optimism had replaced the constant anxiety that had been his companion for months. He splurged on pizza delivery for dinner, a rare treat that made Emma dance around the kitchen in celebration, and found himself laughing more freely than he had in a long time. As they ate, Emma regaled him with elaborate plans for her new science project, a comparison of plant growth under different colored lights. Her enthusiasm for experiments that wouldn't even start until next week was infectious, and Jack realized, with a pang, how much of her natural exuberance had been dampened by his own stress and worry lately. "We should invite Miss Rayner for dinner sometime," Emma announced between bites of pepperoni pizza. "To say thank you." Jack nearly choked on his drink. That's a nice thought, Em, but Miss Rayner is very busy, and this is a business arrangement. She's not doing this as a personal favor." Emma gave him a look that was pure Melissa, slightly exasperated, wholly unconvinced. "Dad, she's helping us keep our house. That's definitely dinner-worthy." "We'll see," Jack hedged, unwilling to promise anything. The idea of Olivia in their home, not as a business associate but as a guest, stirred complicated feelings he wasn't ready to examine. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for Zoe's birthday party at the trampoline park. Jack dropped Emma off with a carefully selected gift, a friendship bracelet-making kit unanimously declared perfect by both Emma and the party store clerk, and found himself with 4 unexpected hours of free time. On impulse, he drove to the hardware store. If they were staying in the house, there were long-delayed repairs he could finally justify addressing. The sagging gutter Olivia had noticed was first on his list. The store was bustling with weekend DIY warriors, carts filled with supplies for various home improvement projects. Jack moved through the familiar aisles with purpose, selecting new gutter brackets, sealant, and a replacement downspout section. As he examined different grades of gutter guards, a familiar voice caught his attention. "Fancy meeting you here again." He turned to find Olivia watching him with amusement, a shopping basket over her arm containing painting supplies. "Beginning to think you live here," Jack said, surprising himself with the ease of the teasing response. "Just stocking up for the Peterson house," Olivia explained. "We're doing some color tests today. I took your suggestion about the deep blue exterior." Jack nodded toward her basket. "Naval and indigo batik to compare." She gestured toward his own cart. "Gutter repairs? Figured I should address that sagging gutter before my new landlord notices," he said, the words feeling strange on his tongue. Olivia's expression softened. "So you're accepting the offer?" "Yes," Jack confirmed, "for Emma's sake and, honestly, for mine too. It's a good opportunity, and I'd be a fool to turn it down." Relief flooded Olivia's features. "I'm glad. I've already spoken with my attorney. He'll have the paperwork ready for Monday afternoon, after the community meeting." They stood in awkward silence for a moment, the bustling store activity flowing around them. Jack realized they were transitioning from potential colleagues to something more complex. Employer and employee, landlord and tenant, possibly even friends. The shifting dynamic created an uncertainty neither seemed sure how to navigate. Olivia broke the silence first. "I'm heading to the Peterson house after this, if you'd like to see the color samples in action. Strictly optional, of course. I know it's your day off." "I'd like that," Jack found himself saying. "I have to pick up Emma from a birthday party at 1, but I'm free until then." They completed their purchases and arranged to meet at the Peterson house. As Jack drove the short distance, he questioned his own eagerness. Was he simply invested in the renovation project, or was there something more drawing him to Olivia's company? He pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on professional interest in the house's transformation. The Peterson house looked different already, even though major renovations hadn't begun. The overgrown bushes had been trimmed back, revealing the elegant proportions of the front porch. A dumpster in the driveway contained debris from initial interior demolition. Outdated fixtures, rotting cabinet pieces, sections of water-damaged drywall. Olivia had already started painting test patches when Jack arrived. She had changed into work clothes, paint-splattered jeans, and a faded Harvard sweatshirt with the sleeves pushed up. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and a smudge of navel blue decorated her cheek. "What do you think?" she asked, gesturing towards several 2-foot square patches of color on the front exterior. "Navel on the left, indigo batik on the right." Jack studied the colors, noting how they transformed the character of the house. The navel was deep and classic, while the indigo had subtle purple undertones that seemed to shift with the changing light. "The navel looks great with the existing brick," he observed, "but the indigo has more personality. Depends on whether you're going for classic or distinctive." Olivia nodded, considering both patches. "I'm leaning toward the indigo. It's unexpected but not too trendy." She handed him a brush. "Want to help with the test patches around the side? I'm trying different trim colors there." They worked together for the next hour, painting samples and discussing the merits of various color combinations. Jack found himself enjoying the simple pleasure of applying paint to wood, of watching transformation happen in real time. It had been too long since he'd participated in the creative aspects of construction rather than just the problem-solving components. "You're good at this," Olivia noted as Jack meticulously edged a sample section. "Steady hand." "My father insisted on precision," Jack explained. "He used to say haste makes waste and waste costs money. But I spent my teenage summers painting trim and learning the value of patience. Mine made me retape drywall seams until they were perfect," Olivia said with a grin. "No bubbles, no wrinkles. I must have wasted miles of tape learning his standards." The casual revelation of their similar backgrounds created a moment of connection, a shared understanding of growing up with hands-on education in building things properly. As they finished the sample patches, Olivia checked her watch. "We should probably wash up. Don't want you picking up Emma with paint all over you." They moved to the makeshift utility sink in the garage, taking turns scrubbing paint from their hands. The space was cramped, forcing them to stand closer than normal. Jack became acutely aware of Olivia's presence, the faint scent of her shampoo, the concentration on her face as she worked at a stubborn spot of paint on her wrist, the slight upturn at the corners of her mouth that suggested a perpetual readiness to smile. "You missed a spot," he said, pointing to the blue smudge on her cheek. "Where?" Olivia rubbed at her face, missing the mark entirely. Without thinking, Jack reached out, gently wiping away the paint with his thumb. "There." The moment stretched between them, suddenly charged with something neither had acknowledged. Olivia's eyes, warm brown and flecked with gold, met his with an expression he couldn't quite read. The spell broke when Jack's phone buzzed with a text message. He stepped back, creating space between them, checking his phone with unwarranted focus. "Emma's party is wrapping up," he said, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. "I should get going." Olivia nodded, her professional demeanor sliding back into place. "Of course. Thank you for your help with the color testing. I'll see you Monday at the community meeting." "I'll be there," Jack confirmed, making his way toward the door, both for the meeting and to sign the paperwork afterward. At the doorway, he paused, looking back at Olivia, who was gathering up paint. "Supplies. Emma suggested we should have you over for dinner sometime, to say thank you." The words rushed out before he could reconsider them. Olivia looked up, surprise evident on her face. "I'd like that," she said simply. Jack nodded, not trusting himself to say more, and headed to his truck. As he drove toward the trampoline park, his mind replayed the moment by the utility sink, the brief touch, the unspoken tension, the possibility that hung in the air between them. The weekend passed in a blur of ordinary activities made extraordinary by the knowledge that they wouldn't be losing their home after all. Jack tackled the gutter repair on Sunday morning, Emma supervising from below with exaggerated importance. They grocery shopped, did laundry, reviewed spelling words, normal tasks that now felt like privileges rather than routine chores. Monday morning arrived with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. The community meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. at the Oakwood Heights Library, with Jack and Olivia planning to meet her attorney afterward to formalize their arrangement. Jack tried to focus on his final consulting report for the Peterson renovation, but his thoughts kept drifting to the evening ahead. Would other residents share his initial skepticism about Rayner Development's plans? Would they see Olivia as an interloper, a harbinger of unwelcome change, or would they appreciate her apparent commitment to thoughtful, community-minded renovation? And beneath these questions ran a more personal current of uncertainty. The moment by the utility sink had awakened something he'd thought dormant since Melissa's death, an awareness of another person that went beyond professional appreciation. The realization both exhilarated and terrified him. At 6:45 p.m., Jackie walked into the Oakwood Heights Library community room, Emma's hand in his. He had debated leaving her with Mrs. Patel, but Emma had insisted on coming, curious about the meeting and equally curious about seeing Ms. Rayner in action, as she put it. The room was already half full, neighborhood residents gathering in, small groups, their expressions ranging from curious to concerned. Jack recognized many faces. The retired teacher who walked her corgi past their house every morning, the couple who ran the local pharmacy, several parents from Emma's school. Tony Guzman waved them over to where he sat with a group of former Harper Construction employees, all men Jack had worked alongside for years. The greeting was warm, though Jack noticed a few questioning glances. Word had clearly spread about his connection to Olivia's company. "Here you might be rejoining the workforce, Mitchell," Tony said, clapping him on the shoulder, "and bringing some of us along for the ride." "That's the plan," Jack confirmed, "if tonight goes well." Before anyone could respond, the room quieted. As Olivia entered, accompanied by a younger woman carrying a laptop and projection equipment. Unlike her usual business attire, Olivia wore dark jeans and a simple blazer over a white shirt. Professional but approachable, a careful balance that Jack suspected was deliberately chosen for this audience. Emma tugged at his sleeve. "Can we sit closer?" she whispered. "I want to hear everything." They found seats in the second row as Olivia set up at the front of the room. She moved with confidence, arranging materials and greeting people individually. As they approached with questions, when she spotted Jack and Emma, she offered a warm smile and a small wave that Emma returned with enthusiasm. At precisely 7 p.m., Olivia stepped to the center of the room, and the community meeting began, a meeting that would determine not just the future of Oakwood Heights, but the shape of Jack's new beginning. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Olivia began, her voice clear and confident as she addressed the gathered residents of Oakwood Heights. "I know community meetings aren't how most people prefer to spend their Monday evenings, so I appreciate your time and interest." The library's community room was now packed, with people standing along the walls and spilling out into the hallway. Jack was surprised by the turnout. Apparently, word of Rayner Development's interest in the neighborhood had spread quickly. "I'm Olivia Rayner, founder and CEO of Rayner Development Group," she continued. "We've recently purchased the Peterson property on Maple Street and are beginning renovations next week. But that's just the first step in what I hope will be a thoughtful, collaborative relationship with Oakwood Heights." Emma sat up straighter in her chair, her attention fixed on Olivia with undisguised fascination. Jack found his own focus similarly, riveted though for more complex reasons. There was something compelling about Olivia in this role, authoritative without being imposing, professional but genuinely engaged. "Before I outline our plans," Olivia said, "I want to be clear about what we're not doing. We're not buying up entire blocks for demolition. We're not building luxury condos or generic McMansions. And we're not interested in pushing out long-term residents to create an entirely new demographic profile for this neighborhood." A murmur ran through the crowd. Skepticism mingled with cautious relief. Jack glanced around, gauging reactions. Some people still looked suspicious, arms crossed, defensively, while others leaned forward with interest. "What we are doing," Olivia continued, gesturing toward the screen where photos began to appear, "is selective renovation of properties that have fallen into disrepair, maintaining their architectural integrity while updating systems and layouts to meet contemporary needs." The presentation showed before and after images of RENA projects in other communities: Victorian homes in Boston, craftsman bungalows in Providence, mid-century moderns in Hartford. In each case, the renovations preserved distinctive architectural elements while modernizing kitchens, bathrooms, and energy systems. "Our approach is guided by three principles," Olivia explained: preservation of character, enhancement of function, and integration with community. That last principle is why we're here tonight, to listen to your concerns, understand your priorities, and incorporate community perspectives into our work. She gestured toward her assistant, who distributed printed materials to the audience. "These packets contain our preliminary plans for Oakwood Heights, including the types of properties we're interested in, our typical renovation approach, and the estimated timeline. You'll also find information about our community benefit commitments." Jack opened the glossy folder, scanning the contents with professional interest. The plans were more detailed and transparent than he'd expected. Specific streets identified for potential projects, architectural guidelines tailored to Oakwoods, existing building styles, even environmental impact assessments for construction waste. The community benefits section particularly caught his attention. RENA Development proposed establishing a property tax assistance fund for seniors and low-income homeowners, creating apprenticeship programs with the local vocational school, and contributing to the renovation of the neighborhood playground that had fallen into disrepair. "This is so cool," Emma whispered, pointing to the playground designs. "They're going to add a zip line." Olivia opened the floor for questions, and hands immediately shot up throughout the room. She called on a gray-haired woman in the front row. "I've lived in Oakwood for 43 years, the woman stated, her voice quavering slightly with age, but firm with conviction. "Every time developers come in, they make pretty promises. Then prices go up, and next thing you know, people like, 'We can't afford to stay. Why should we believe you're different?' A direct challenge right out of the gate. Jack watched Olivia carefully, curious how she would respond. "That's a fair question, Mrs. Abernathy. Margaret Abernathy." "Mrs. Abernathy," Olivia acknowledged with a respectful nod. "You're describing gentrification without displacement protection, which is unfortunately common. It's also bad community development and, frankly, bad business in the long run." She stepped out from behind the podium, moving closer to the audience. "Our tax assistance fund is specifically designed to address that concern. We allocate 3% of our project budgets to help long-term residents manage increased property tax burdens. It's not just charity, it's self-interest. Neighborhoods lose their soul when they lose their history, and that soul is what makes renovated properties valuable in the first place." Mrs. Abernathy didn't look entirely convinced, but she nodded slightly, seemingly appreciative of the straightforward answer. The questions continued. Concerns about construction noise, trash, parking impacts, inquiries about hiring practices, contractor selection, wage standards, debates about architectural choices, color palettes, landscaping approaches. Olivia answered each with specificity and patience, occasionally deferring to her assistant for technical details, but mostly drawing on what seemed to be comprehensive knowledge of both her business model and the neighborhood itself. When Tony Guzman stood to ask about local hiring, Olivia glanced briefly toward Jack before responding. "We're committed to using local talent whenever possible," she said. "In fact, I'm pleased to announce that Jack Mitchell, who many of you know, will be joining Rayner Development as our Oakwood Heights project manager, overseeing all technical aspects of our renovations here. A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Several people turned to look at Jack, expressions ranging from congratulatory to questioning. Emma sat up straighter beside him, clearly proud to be associated with this public announcement. Jack's expertise with these homes is unmatched, Olivia continued, and he'll be working with a team of local contractors, including many former Harper Construction employees. We believe the people who built this neighborhood should be the ones to help revitalize it. The endorsement warmed Jack unexpectedly. He'd assumed his hiring was primarily a practical business decision, perhaps with a dash of charity, given his financial situation. Hearing Olivia speak of his expertise with genuine respect shifted something in his perception of their arrangement. As the meeting progressed, Jack observed the gradual transformation in the room's atmosphere. Initial suspicion gave way to cautious interest, then to active engagement. By the time Olivia concluded her formal presentation, many residents were gathered around the concept boards, offering suggestions and sharing stories about the neighborhood's history. That was amazing, Emma declared as they waited for the crowd to thin. Ms. Rayner knows everything, and she said your name in front. Of everyone, Jack smiled, ruffling his daughter's hair. She does seem to know what she's doing. Mr. Mitchell, Olivia appeared beside them, looking both energized and slightly drained from the intensive question session. Thanks for coming. What did you think? Impressive, Jack said honestly. You did your homework on Oakwood. People noticed that. High praise from a lifelong resident, Olivia smiled. And Emma, thank you for coming. What did you think of the playground designs? The zip line is awesome, Emma said without hesitation. But I think you should add more swings. The ones we have now are always full. Olivia laughed. Excellent point. I'll make a note of that. She pulled out her phone and actually typed something, a gesture that made Emma beam with importance. Are we still meeting your attorney tonight? Jack asked, conscious of the time. It was already past Emma's normal bedtime. If you're still comfortable proceeding, Olivia confirmed. He's waiting in the library's small conference room, but she hesitated, looking at Emma. It might take a while. Does Emma have someone she could stay with? Jack frowned, realizing he hadn't planned well for this. Mrs. Patel was visiting her daughter in Boston, and he didn't want to impose on other parents with no advance notice. I can sit in the children's section and read, Emma offered. I'll be super quiet. Olivia considered this. Actually, my assistant Mia could stay with Emma in the main library. She's wonderful with kids, has 2 younger siblings she practically raised. Only if that's okay with both of you, of course. The solution seemed reasonable, and after a brief introduction to Mia, a cheerful young woman who immediately engaged Emma in conversation about favorite books, they settled Emma at a library table with a stack of novels and snacks from Mia's bag. I'll be just down the hall if you need me, Jack promised, still feeling a twinge of parental guilt. Dad, I'm fine, Emma insisted, with the exaggerated patience of a child who feels unnecessarily fussed over. Go sign the important papers. The small conference room presented a stark contrast to the lively community meeting. Jackson Barnes, Olivia's attorney, was a middle-aged man with wire-rimmed glasses and the careful precision of someone who measured his words by the billable minute. He had documents spread across the table in neat stacks, each with color-coded tabs indicating signature locations. Mr. Mitchell, he greeted Jack with a firm handshake. Ms. Rayner has briefed me on your arrangement. I've prepared the necessary paperwork for both the property transaction and your employment contract. For the next hour, they worked through the documents methodically. The property agreement was straightforward. Rayner Development would purchase Jack's house at a price that covered his mortgage debt plus arrears. then lease it back to him with an option to repurchase at the original sale price within 5 years. The monthly lease payment was indeed lower than his current mortgage, with a portion allocated toward the eventual repurchase. "This is generous," Jack noted, looking up from the figures. "Below market rate for sure." Barnes adjusted his glasses. Miss Rayner was insistent on the terms. "From a strictly business perspective, I advised a higher rate, but she was—" He paused, choosing his words carefully, quite determined on this point. Jack glanced at Olivia, who was reviewing the employment contract with focused attention, seemingly oblivious to their conversation. He wondered again about her motives, about the complicated mix of business and personal considerations that might be driving her decisions. The employment contract was equally favorable: a competitive salary, comprehensive benefits, performance bonuses tied to project completion metrics, and a clear outline of responsibilities that matched his experience and skills perfectly. It felt tailored to him, not a generic template. "Everything look acceptable?" Olivia asked as Jack finished reading the final page. "More than acceptable," he admitted. "But I have to ask again, why me? You could hire someone with project management credentials from a big firm, someone with a fancy degree and a spotless financial history." Olivia set down her pen, considering her response. "I could, but they wouldn't know which houses have problematic wiring because the same electrician worked on them in the 1970s. They wouldn't understand why certain streets flood during heavy rains due to grading issues that never made it into official records. They wouldn't recognize the value of preserving details that make these houses uniquely Oakwood." She leaned forward slightly. "This isn't just about construction knowledge, Jack. It's about community knowledge, the kind you can't learn in business school or on a resume. That's what I'm investing in." The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. Jack nodded slowly, accepting her explanation, even as he sensed there might be more to it than professional calculation. "Then I'm in," he said, picking up the pen, "on all counts." As they signed the various documents, initials here, full, signatures there, dates everywhere, Jack felt a curious mixture of relief and anticipation. This wasn't just about saving his house, it was about building something new from the ruins of his collapsed career. A second chance he hadn't dared to hope for just days ago. Barnes gathered the completed paperwork with efficient movements. "I'll file these first thing tomorrow. The property transaction should close by Friday, well ahead of your foreclosure deadline, and your employment officially begins." He checked a date on the contract: next Monday. "Actually," Olivia interjected, "if Jack is available, I'd like him to start tomorrow. We have contractor bids to review for the Peterson house, and I'd value his input." "I'm available," Jack confirmed, trying to mask his eagerness with professional restraint. After Barnes departed with his briefcase full of their future, Jack and Olivia remained in the conference room momentarily, a strangely intimate silence settling between them. "Thank you," Jack said finally, the simple words inadequate for the magnitude of what she had done. Olivia shook her head slightly. "No need for thanks. This is business, remember? Mutually beneficial." But the softness in her expression belied the brisk words. They walked together to the main library, where Emma was deep in conversation with Mia, an array of architecture books spread across the table between them. "Dad, did you know there are buildings shaped like animals? Look at this one. It's an elephant." Emma held up a book showing architectural oddities from around the world. "All finished," Jack announced. "Thanks for being so patient." As they gathered Emma's things and prepared to leave, Olivia handed Jack a business card, different from her standard one, with a handwritten note on the back. "My direct line and email," she explained, "for project matters. I'd like you to come by the Peterson house tomorrow at 9 a.m. if that works. We'll go over the contractor bids and finalize the renovation schedule." "I'll be there," Jack promised, tucking the card carefully into his wallet. Outside the library, the night had turned chilly, stars visible in patches between scudding clouds. Emma yawned widely, the excitement of the evening finally giving way to fatigue. "Good night, Emma," Olivia said, smiling at the sleepy child. "Thank you for your swing suggestion. I'm adding it to our playground plans tomorrow." Emma beamed, despite her tiredness. "I can help with other ideas too. I use playgrounds all the time, so I'm basically an expert." "I'll remember that," Olivia assured her, then turned to Jack. "Good night, Mr. Mitchell, or I suppose I should say, see you tomorrow." "Tomorrow," Jack echoed, finding himself reluctant to end the evening despite Emma's obvious need for bed. As they walked to their respective vehicles in the library parking lot, Jack was acutely aware of the strange new reality he had just entered. A reality where Olivia Rayner was simultaneously his employer, his landlord, and something harder. To define that made his heart beat a little faster when she smiled. Emma fell asleep almost instantly after they arrived home, the day's excitements finally overtaking her. Jack tucked her in, watching her peaceful face in the gentle glow of her nightlight, gratitude washing over him in waves. They would keep this home, this room, this life they had built. Whatever complications might arise from his new relationship with Olivia, that fundamental gift outweighed all concerns. Downstairs, Jack moved through rooms that suddenly felt different. Not because anything had physically changed, but because his relationship to them had transformed. This house was still his home, but now it was also a temporary possession, something he would need to earn back over time. He paused in the kitchen, his gaze falling on the fruit bowl that had hidden the foreclosure notice for so many anxious days. Lifting it, he found the dreaded envelope still there, its power now neutralized by the agreement signed this evening. He picked it up, considering it for a moment, then deliberately dropped it into the recycling bin. One chapter closed. Another beginning. Morning arrived with a clarity that matched Jack's mood. He moved through his routine with renewed energy, making Emma's breakfast, checking her homework, preparing her lunch. Ordinary tasks now infused with the knowledge that their foundation was secure again. "Are you excited for your first real day of work?" Emma asked, carefully spreading peanut butter on her toast. "I am," Jack admitted. "Nervous too, a little." Emma nodded sagely. "That's normal. I was nervous on my first day of second grade, but now I love it, except for fractions. Nobody loves fractions." Jack laughed, grateful for his daughter's unfailing ability to put things in perspective. "Good point. I'll remember that if I start feeling overwhelmed." After seeing Emma off to her bus stop, Jack returned home to prepare for his meeting with Olivia. He showered, shaved, and stood before his closet, suddenly uncertain about appropriate attire. His wardrobe consisted primarily of work clothes suitable for construction sites and casual wear for everyday life, nothing that screamed project manager. He settled on clean jeans, a button-down shirt that Melissa had given him years ago, and his least worn work boots. Professional enough for meetings, practical enough for walking a renovation site. As he dressed, he realized how long it had been since he'd cared about his appearance for work. The odd jobs and handyman gigs of recent months hadn't required anything beyond basic cleanliness. The Peterson house looked different. As Jack approached it at precisely 9 a.m., a new sign had appeared in the front yard, another quality restoration by Rayner Development. And activity buzzed around the property. A landscaper was addressing the overgrown front yard. A dumpster had been positioned strategically for the upcoming demolition phase, and what looked like an environmental assessment team was examining the exterior. Olivia met him at the front door, dressed in slim black pants and a tailored grey blazer over a simple white shirt. Casual enough for a construction site, but polished enough for client meetings. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and she carried a tablet that she consulted as she greeted him. Right on time, she said with a smile. We've got the contractor bids to review, and the architect sent updated drawings based on your recommendations. I've set up in what will eventually be the dining room. She led him through the house, now emptied of the previous owner's belongings, and ready for transformation. The dining room contained a folding table covered with blueprints, material samples, and contractor proposals. 2 laptops sat open, displaying spreadsheets and design renderings. Coffee? Olivia offered, gesturing toward a small table in the corner where a coffee maker and an assortment of cups waited. Please, Jack said, grateful for the familiar ritual to ease his nervousness. They settled into work with surprising ease, reviewing bids line by line, comparing material costs and labor estimates, debating the merits of various approaches to the renovation challenges. Jack found himself slipping naturally into the role of advisor, drawing on his extensive knowledge of both construction techniques and the specific quirks of Oakwood Heights homes. Tony's bid is higher on the electrical work, he noted, comparing 2 proposals, but he's accounting for upgrading the entire system, not just the problem areas. In the long run, that's a better investment. Olivia made notes on her tablet. I trust your judgment. My concern is the timeline. His estimate adds 2 weeks to the overall schedule. I can talk to him about that, Jack offered. There might be ways to compress the schedule without compromising quality. Perfect. Olivia made another note. That's exactly the kind of solution I was hoping you'd bring to the table. As the morning progressed, they developed a comfortable, working rhythm, complementing each other's strengths. Olivia had a razor-sharp business mind and an excellent eye for design. Jack contributed practical construction knowledge and realistic assessments of what could be accomplished within various constraints. Around noon, Olivia's assistant Mia arrived with lunch, sandwiches from a local deli, and sparkling water in glass bottles. They ate at the folding table, blueprints pushed carefully aside, the conversation shifting from strictly professional to more casual topics. So how did Emma come to be such a playground expert? Olivia asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. Jack smiled, remembering Emma's confident declaration the night before. She's never met a playground she didn't want to improve. When she was 5, she drew up elaborate plans for rebuilding the one at her preschool, complete with moats and towers. Sounds like a budding architect, Olivia observed, maybe, or a future theme park designer. Her ambitions change weekly. Olivia laughed, the sound warm and genuine. That's the wonderful thing about being 8. The world is still full of possible yous. Jack studied her, curious about the path that had led her to her current role. When did you know you wanted to go into development? Olivia considered the question, absently turning her water bottle in small circles. Not until after college. Actually, I studied business because it seemed practical, but I didn't have a clear direction. Then my old neighborhood in South Boston started gentrifying. She paused, her expression growing more serious. I went back to visit and hardly recognized the place. All these generic luxury condos, replacing the triple-deckers where families had lived for generations. The corner store where my dad used to buy me ice cream was now a high-end pet boutique. Jack nodded, understanding exactly the kind of transformation she was describing. He'd seen similar changes in other parts of their city. What bothered me wasn't the improvement itself, Olivia continued. Those old buildings needed work, no question. It was the erasure of history, of community, of the particular character that made the neighborhood special. I thought there had to be a better way. So you decided to become the developer you wished had come to your neighborhood, Jack suggested. Olivia looked surprised, then pleased by his perception. Exactly. Though it took years of working for other firms before, I could start my own company with a different approach. The conversation flowed easily from there, touching on their respective backgrounds, professional experiences, and perspectives on neighborhood development. Jack found himself sharing stories he hadn't told in years, about learning construction, at his father's side, about the satisfaction of restoring historic details others might tear out, about the evolution of Oakwood Heights through decades of economic ups and downs. Their lunch break stretched longer than planned, but neither seemed inclined to cut it short. There was something remarkably comfortable about sitting in this half-empty house, surrounded by the promise of renewal, exchanging ideas and experiences, with someone who understood both the practical and emotional dimensions of creating homes. When Mia returned with contractor confirmations that required immediate attention, they reluctantly returned to work mode. The afternoon passed quickly in a flurry of decisions, scheduling confirmations and material selections. By the time 3:30 approached, when Jack needed to leave to meet Emma's bus, they had accomplished far more than he had anticipated for a first day. "I should head out," he said, checking his watch. "Emma's bus arrives at 3:45. "Of course," Olivia said immediately. "Family comes first. That's a core value at Rayner Development, not just a saying. We can pick this up tomorrow." As Jack gathered his notes, Olivia added, "I meant to ask earlier. I'd like to host a kick-off dinner for the key contractors and tradespeople this weekend. Nothing formal, just a chance for everyone to meet before construction begins in earnest. Would you and Emma be able to attend? Saturday around 6 p.m. at my house in Cambridge." The invitation caught Jack by surprise. He had assumed any team gatherings would be at the worksite or in a restaurant, not at Olivia's personal residence. "We'd be happy to come," he said, curiosity about her home mingling with a flutter of something more complex at the prospect of seeing Olivia in a personal rather than professional setting. "Wonderful. I'll text you the address." She walked him to the door, adding, "And if Emma has any dietary restrictions or strong preferences, let me know. I'm planning a buffet with options, but I want to make sure there's something she'll enjoy." The thoughtful consideration for his daughter touched Jack unexpectedly. "She's not picky, just no shellfish, mild allergy, and she's currently obsessed with anything involving chocolate." Olivia smiled. "Noted. I'll make sure chocolate features prominently in the dessert options." As Jack left the Peterson house, he was struck by how dramatically his circumstances had changed in the span of a week. From the brink of foreclosure to a promising new job, from isolation in his financial struggles to connection with a team of skilled professionals, from resignation about losing his home to hope for a stable future. And Olivia Rayner was at the center of this transformation. A complex figure who defied his initial assumptions, who combined business acumen with genuine concern for community, who seemed to see value in him that he had started to doubt in himself. Walking home under the clear autumn sky, Jack allowed himself to acknowledge what he had been avoiding. His interest in Olivia was not purely professional. There was an attraction. There, a pull toward her intelligence, her confidence, her understated warmth. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. For 3 years since Melissa's death, he had focused exclusively on survival, emotional and financial. Romance hadn't been on his radar, hadn't seemed possible or even desirable in the landscape of grief and struggle he inhabited. Yet here, it was unexpected and inconvenient, complicating an already complex situation. She was his employer, his landlord, the person holding the keys to his professional future and his family's home. The power imbalance alone made any potential personal relationship problematic, and that assumed she might share his interest, which was far from certain. Jack pushed these thoughts aside as he reached the bus stop where Emma would soon arrive. This wasn't the time for such complications. He had a job to do, a house to reclaim, a daughter to raise. Whatever confusing feelings might be stirring toward Olivia Rayner, they would need to remain firmly contained. Emma bounded off the bus. With her usual enthusiasm, backpack bouncing against her shoulders, a paper clutched in her hand. "Dad, I got an A on my science proposal. Ms. Harrison says my experiment about plant lights is ambitious and creative. Jack swept her into a hug, her academic triumph pushing all other concerns momentarily aside. That's fantastic, Em. I knew all your planning would pay off. As they walked home together, Emma peppered him with questions about his first day, what the Peterson house looked like inside, what kinds of decisions he had made, whether he had gotten to use any cool tools. Yet, her unabashed pride in his new position warmed him from within. And Ms. Rayner was nice to work with, Emma asked, swinging their joined hands as they walked. Very professional and knowledgeable, Jack answered carefully. She invited us to dinner on Saturday at her house in Cambridge, a team gathering for everyone working on the renovation. Emma's eyes widened with excitement. Her house? I bet it's amazing, like a castle or something. Jack laughed. I doubt it's a castle, but I'm sure it's nice. And she specifically asked about what foods you like, so she can make sure there's something you'll enjoy. She remembered me? Emma looked pleased and slightly awed. Most grown-ups forget about kids when they're planning things. Ms. Rayner seems to be good at remembering what's important to people, Jack said, realizing the truth of the statement as he spoke it. Throughout their work session, Olivia had consistently demonstrated attention to details that mattered, not just architectural features or budget considerations, but human factors that would affect how future residents experience the renovated home. At their own house, Jack noticed the mail had arrived, including an official-looking envelope from the bank. His stomach tightened reflexively before he remembered the foreclosure was no longer a threat. He opened the envelope to find confirmation that a payoff of his loan was in process with closing documents to follow. It was real. The arrangement with Olivia was moving forward. His home was being saved. That evening, as Emma worked on her homework at the kitchen table, Jack found himself thinking about the upcoming dinner at Olivia's house. What would her home reveal about her? Would it be sleek and modern, reflecting her successful professional persona? Or might it contain unexpected touches that spoke to other dimensions of her character? And how would it feel to interact with her in a social rather than purely professional context? The boundary between employer and friend, or potentially something more, seemed increasingly blurry. Jack shook his head slightly, refocusing on the renovation schedule he was reviewing. These questions were premature and possibly inappropriate. For now, he needed to concentrate on doing his job exceptionally well and providing stability for Emma. Everything else was a complication he couldn't afford. Yet as he worked into the evening, occasionally glancing across the street at the Peterson house, where a single light still burned in Olivia's makeshift office, Jack couldn't entirely suppress a sense of anticipation about Saturday evening and what it might reveal about the woman who had so unexpectedly changed the trajectory of his life. Saturday evening arrived with golden autumn light bathing Oakwood Heights in a warm glow. Jack stood before his bedroom mirror, adjusting the collar of his one good dress shirt. Beside him, Emma twirled in a purple dress she'd insisted was perfect for a fancy dinner party. "Do I look professional?" Jack asked, more nervous than he cared to admit. Emma paused her twirling to study him seriously. "You look handsome. Mom would think so too." The simple statement touched something deep in Jack's heart. "Thank you, sunshine. That means a lot." The drive to Cambridge took 20 minutes, the navigation system guiding them to a tree-lined street of historic brownstones. Olivia's home wasn't the castle Emma had imagined, but it was undeniably impressive, a beautifully restored Victorian with original architectural details preserved and enhanced. "Wow," Emma whispered as they approached the front steps. "It's like a dollhouse but giant." Jack pressed the doorbell, his free hand holding the bottle of wine he'd carefully selected. Nothing expensive enough to seem like he was trying too hard, but good enough to show appreciation for the invitation. Olivia opened the door herself, wearing a simple blue dress that somehow managed to look both casual and elegant. "You made it!" she greeted them warmly. Come in, everyone's in the back garden." The interior of Olivia's home revealed a personality beyond the polished professional Jack had come to know. Walls lined with overflowing bookshelves, photographs from global travels, architectural salvage pieces repurposed as art, and everywhere, evidence of a skilled restorer's hand, original woodwork gleaming with care, vintage fixtures thoughtfully preserved, modern conveniences integrated seamlessly without disrupting historic character. "Your house is amazing," Emma declared, eyes wide as she took in the details. "It's like a museum, but cozy." Olivia laughed. "That might be the nicest compliment I've ever received. Thank you, Emma." She led them through the house to a charming backyard garden where about a dozen people mingled, drinks in hand. Jack recognized most of them: Tony Guzman, other contractors from the neighborhood, Mia, the assistant. They greeted him with friendly nods and raised glasses, already seeming comfortable in this setting. The evening unfolded with an ease Jack hadn't expected. Good food, easy conversation, a genuine camaraderie forming among people who would be working closely together in the coming months. Emma quickly became the unofficial center of attention, charming the contractors with her detailed questions about their specialties and offering unsolicited but entertaining advice about the playground renovations. As twilight deepened, strings of garden lights illuminated the space with a magical glow. Jack found himself standing with Olivia near her koi pond, slightly removed from the main group. "Thank you for this," he said, gesturing toward the gathering. "It's good for everyone to connect before the chaos of construction begins." "That's exactly why I do it," Olivia agreed. "Buildings are important, but relationships matter more in the end." Their eyes met in the gentle light, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of shared values, of mutual respect that had deepened over the week of working together, of possibilities neither had acknowledged directly. "Dad!" Emma's voice broke the moment as she bounded over. "Mr. Tony says he has a puppy that needs a home. Can we go see it tomorrow, please?" Jack laughed, grateful for his daughter's perfect timing. "We can talk about that later, Em. Right now, shouldn't you be helping with the chocolate fountain?" "Ms. Rayner set up?" Emma's eyes widened. "There's a chocolate fountain?" She looked to Olivia for confirmation. "Just inside the French doors," Olivia confirmed with a smile. "Mia's supervising, but I'm sure she could use a chocolate expert's assistance." Emma needed no further encouragement, darting off toward this new adventure. "You didn't have to do that," Jack said. "The fountain, I mean." "I wanted to," Olivia replied simply. "Making one little girl happy seems like a small thing, but it matters." She paused, then added more softly, "A lot of things I've done lately have been because I wanted to, not because I had to." The implication hung in the air between them. Before Jack could respond, Tony approached with questions about Monday's schedule, and the moment slipped away into practical matters. Hours later, as the party wound down and guests departed, Jack found himself reluctant to leave. Emma had fallen asleep on a garden bench, worn out by excitement and sugar. Olivia brought a soft blanket to cover her, the gesture so natural and thoughtful it made Jack's chest tighten. "She's remarkable," Olivia said, looking at the sleeping child. "You've done an amazing job, especially considering everything you've been through." "Some days I have no idea what I'm doing," Jack admitted. "But she makes it worth figuring out as I go." Olivia nodded. "That's all any of us can do, really. Figure it out as we go." She hesitated, then added, "I'm glad you're figuring it out here in Oakwood, with us." The word us contained multitudes, professional collaboration, community, connection, and perhaps something more personal neither was ready to name. "I'm glad too," Jack said simply. As they gathered a sleeping Emma and made their way to the door, Jack realized that the broken fence that had first brought Olivia into their lives had led to so much more than a simple repair. It had become the first step in rebuilding what truly mattered: security, purpose, connection, hope. Some broken things, when mended with care, become stronger at the joining. As Jack carried his daughter to the car under a sky full of stars, the future no longer loomed as a threat, but as a promise, one he was suddenly eager to keep. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.